Well, I was reluctant, but then I saw it runs on blockchain technology. Oh, nice. It's got blockchain. What's blockchain? No, seriously, what is blockchain? So, unless you've been living under a rock since just before the pandemic until like today, chances are pretty good that you have heard the term blockchain. And more likely than not, you associate it with cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, Ethereum, or NFTs. And of course you do, because that's where it gained a lot of its popularity. But the underlying technology of blockchain is actually pretty remarkable. What it does in ensuring data integrity for recording transactions and transparency that it creates is revolutionary. But what is it exactly? Great news. I've got just the analogy. So, I want you to imagine that a community decides to create a large quilt, and each patch of the quilt is created by a different person. And once a patch is added to the quilt, it is stitched in place permanently, and the entire community agrees on its placement and its design before moving on to add another patch. This quilt grows over time as more patches are added, becoming a sort of tapestry of the community's collective effort. In this sense, the quilt represents the blockchain ledger. It is a continuously growing list of records or blocks that are linked together. Each patch in the quilt or ledger contains information, and once it's sewn into the quilt, it becomes a permanent part of the tapestry. So when someone creates a patch and adds it to the quilt, it's a lot like a new block of transactions being created in the blockchain. The process of adding this patch involves the creator presenting their design to the community, the network participants in blockchain. The community then reviews the design transactions, ensuring that it follows the agreed upon quilt making guidelines or blockchain protocol. In many cases, this means referencing the block or quilt patch that was just put on before it. And this establishes that long chain that you hear of in blockchain. Now, there are a few pieces to how blockchain operates that are, again, pretty remarkable. One of them is called their consensus mechanism. So before a patch can be sewn into the quilt, all members of the community must agree that it fits the overall design and follows the rules. This is akin to the consensus mechanism in blockchain, where participants must agree on the validity of transactions before a new block is added to the chain. This ensures that every addition to the quilt is accurate, agreed upon, and in line with the community's standards. Once a patch is added to the quilt, removing or altering it is extremely difficult without damaging the entire quilt. Similarly, once a block is added to the blockchain, it's nearly impossible to alter or remove without consensus from the majority of the network, making blockchain tamper resistant and providing a permanent, unchangeable record of transactions. In a lot of ways, it's because each block has to reference the previous block that was added. So just going in and removing one section of the quilt can't really be done, because every subsequent action would need to reference the one before it. Now, imagine that this quilt, as it's being worked on, is displayed in the community center, letting everyone see the progress and the design contributions as they occur, sort of in real time. Blockchain operates on a similar principle of transparency as well, where all participants in the network can view the transactions on the ledger, ensuring that there's openness and building trust among all of the participants that are involved. Imagine that if each participant in the quilt making project held a copy of the design instructions and the quilt's progress. So this setup would ensure that no single person has complete control over the quilt's design. This represents blockchain's sort of decentralized nature. There is no central authority steering the course of each transaction. Instead, the ledger or the quilt is distributed across a network, making it more secure and less prone to failure or control by any single entity. Meaning that if a patch was attempted to be modified on one of those many copies of the quilt, it would need to simultaneously occur on every other copy of the quilt for all of those who are participating in the process. That adds a layer of protection for transactions that doesn't really exist when there's a one-to-one ratio. There's no individual record controlled by one entity that can double check the veracity of transactions. It's that everyone who is participating in the process can see from beginning to end everything that's occurred. So that's blockchain in a quilting analogy.